Hello, everybody. This is Jake, your resident content cowboy here. Yeehaw! Dun 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 dun. Oh, I probably get sued for that. Don't do it, Jake. Don't do the song. Hi, and it's Tuesday. Sorry. What do we do on Tuesday? I've just been having these crazy headache things. Jake 6, what do I do on a Tuesday? Today, normally on Mondays we do tier lists, but you weren't here yesterday. You took the day off, so we're going to do a tier list. Right, of course, a tier list. Sorry, my head has been throbbing. You know, one of the other Jakes around here could have picked up some slack and maybe done something yesterday. I'm looking at you, Jake number 8. Whatever. Hey, don't you whatever me. What's his deal anyway? Jake number 8's deal is that he's like Squall from Final Fantasy VIII. Oh, so he's like all emo? You're like all emo? Whatever. I seriously cannot believe you are the main character of a video game. Sorry, it's just... I've got these splitting headaches and none of you are helping me. I'm still coming for you, Jake 4. There is that headache again. I'm having these horrible daymares. Boss, what's a daymare? A daymare, a nightmare during the day where I lose consciousness and all my vision is just my mortal enemy, Jake number 3. A daymare. I don't have time for this. It's time for a tier list. That's right. Blastoise is out. It is time to put everyone in their order. We have a patch coming soon, but it's not really going to change this at all because it only affects my boy Bliss. So let's head on over to the tier list. All right, here we are. So this tier list is going to be what I think is probably the best in the meta right now. And meta just means, I believe, most effective tactics available. So if I put a Pokemon that you like quite low on the list, it doesn't mean that Pokemon is bad and that you can't be good with it. It just means there are probably better choices within the current meta, and I will try to explain why that is. So let me show you what tiers we have today. We have the God tier, where there can only be one Pokemon inside the God tier. We're not Norse over here, okay? We have the S tier, we have the A tier, B tier. Still got the B tier. And we have the Y tier. So let's start putting these Pokemon in their places. Yeah. Let's start with, who do we want to start with? Let's start with someone like Greninja. I think we all know that Greninja is extremely good, and Greninja is the most chosen. It has to be the most chosen AD carry by far. It's, you know, leagues ahead of Cinder right now as far as people picking it. So let's go ahead and put Greninja where Greninja deserves to be, which is the S tier. Greninja is used all the time. Greninja is extremely strong. Greninja is great in team fights. Greninja can clean up tons of KOs. I personally think the Surf Greninja is the strongest Greninja available, but Water Shuriken is also extremely good. Greninja is extremely versatile, but primarily wants to be in the jungle. It doesn't perform as well in lane. The reason you want Greninja in the jungle is because the faster you can get your Pokemon that deal the most damage to a high level, the easier it is to secure lots of team fights. Greninja, I think, is without question an S tier Pokemon. And I guess I should compare Greninja to his closest relative, which is Cinderace. I think Cinderace is still really, really good. And I recognize that Cinderace's nerfs, which it did get a lot, has kind of pushed it down the list a little bit. It definitely has not pushed Cinder into a B tier choice, but it's seeming more and more that Cinder is A tier, where Greninja is S tier. I still think Cinder's great. I really do. And I also think in some ways it's a little easier to use than Greninja and combos pretty well with some of the supports that are popular in the game right now. Still a very, very solid choice, but the reason it's not as strong as Greninja is some of its damage was taken away in that nerf, and it just seems like the team fight multiple KO ability that you're getting out of Greninja, I think might be a little stronger, but I think they're both extremely strong attack damage Pokemon choices that you really couldn't go wrong having one of them on your team. Both will probably be in the jungle. And I guess now that we're talking about the jungle, let's talk about someone like Absol. Absol's a Pokemon that I feel like has had a a tough run for a long time. And the reason is its identity is kind of a mess. So here's the thing with Absol, is that Absol is really, really good early game, pretty darn good mid game, and really weak late game. And it's just too squishy. It just can't help you with the late game team fights. And there are a few Pokemon who kind of run into this issue as well. And I guess, you know, I'll just talk about them all right now. This is going to primarily make up my Y tier, and it is Pokemon like Absol, Talonflame, Gengar, and one other. Where's the other? No, you know what? Zeraora doesn't fully do this for me, but let's talk about speedsters right now. So here's the meta. And again, this just means the best thing possible. It doesn't mean you can't be a great Absol at all. I've seen some amazing ones. But what's going on in the meta right now is you have these really, really tanky units that can also output tons of damage, and near the end of the game are much more valuable than someone with a low health pool that kind of deals burst damage and then needs to get away. And that's what you find mostly happening with these speedsters here, except for possibly one exception, and that I will say is Zeraora. So Zeraora, I think, is still a really good Pokemon and doesn't fully fall into the Y category for me, but the entire speedster category is a mess, and it needs some help. Something needs to happen to make speedsters more viable. And part of the problem you're seeing is you've got Greninja and Cinder up here, and both of them could use the jungle better than the speedsters. And when I say use the jungle, I mean get the experience they need from the jungle. You would much rather have a level 13 to 15 Greninja near the end of the game than a level 13 to 15 Talonflame. It's just not comparable. And because of that, the jungle priority is given to the attackers, and that puts the speedsters in this really weird position. There are also some other people who are getting some jungle priority lately, and I totally get it. Out of these three right now, I would say Zeraora is the best. It's probably B or A tier, but if I had a choice to have Zeraora on my team or someone else that would fill that role, I would probably have someone else. Maybe Zeraora teeters into A because it's still a pretty good Pokemon, and it's good throughout the game. It just falls off a little bit late. I think I'm going to leave it in B for a moment. I'm going to tell you why as we continue moving through this list. So let's do another S tier Pokemon. Okay. An easy S tier Pokemon is Lucario. Lucario is amazing. Lucario is going to get nerfed at some point. It's going to break my heart. I love Lucario. Power Up Punch and Extreme Speed both seem to work pretty well with inside some higher ranked games. I love Power Up Punch, but I think Extreme Speed's also really good. Lucario steals objectives. Lucario fights well in lane. Lucario fights well early. Lucario fights well late. Lucario never calls me back. What's going on, Lucario? We had a great date. So, Lucario's just great. Also, Lucario's passive is just amazing, just giving it more survivability. It's an absolute S tier Pokemon, and in fact, I think it's probably going to get one of the biggest nerfs in the game at some point. I don't know when the nerf is coming, but us people who like Lucario, it's going to be a sad day because I think Lucario is going to get hit pretty hard. It's just so solid. And now that I'm talking about one of the best all-rounders in the game, let me bring up the rest of the all-rounders. We have Charizard, we have Garchomp, and Machamp. Out of these three all-rounders, if we're not counting Lucario because Lucario is already S tier, I think there is definitely a clear pecking order between the three. So Machamp is the best of the three. It doesn't reach Lucario heights, and I remember when Machamp got nerfed, I was kind of thinking, why? He was really good, but he wasn't so good that he needed a nerf. It wasn't Slowbro levels of confusion, but I was confused why we saw a Machamp nerf when we did. That being said, I still think Machamp is very, very good. Its only problem is it's outshined by someone like Lucario, and then you start to think, well, okay, where do I put Machamp then? I think Machamp works pretty well in the jungle, but you'd never put it in the jungle over Greninja and Cinderace. So, okay, and someone else. And these 3 Pokemon, by the way, all could really use the jungle. Machamp could use it the least, but Charizard and Garchomp really need experience before they start becoming useful. So I think you would put Machamp in a lane, but Machamp is really not as good in lane as someone like Lucario. It's a good Pokemon, it scales pretty well, and it's decent mid and late game, just kind of once it gets a few of its moves. I think level 5 it gets submission, and then it's much, much better when it becomes Machoke. So I will keep it in the A tier for now, but both Charizard and Garchomp are B tier Pokemon. Good Pokemon in situations, but you know, when you see a Charizard or a Garchomp on your team, you just think, man, I hope they know how to get enough experience to become useful. And that's the problem with both of those Pokemon. When you look at both of these, I think Zeraora is clearly A tier compared to these. I still might move Zera up. You know what? For now, I'm going to put Zera in the A tier. I think it's a really good Pokemon. And when I'm comparing it to Char and Gar and Zare, I would like to have Zare in the A tier for now. Yeah. Okay. Let's talk about Ninetales. Ninetales is either an S or an A tier Pokemon. I personally think it's an S tier Pokemon still. It's not as commonly picked as when I see some of the highest ranked teams, but it's a solid choice no matter what you do. Well, that's not true. It's a solid choice no matter what lane you put it in, top or bottom. It's good throughout the entire game. It falls off a little late game, but most of the game you are dominating with Ninetales, especially in one of those 2 lanes. You can lane it with just about anybody, and Ninetales is a brutal combination to have. So I would consider it an S tier Pokemon. You're going to run the Aurora Veil and Dazzling Gleam build on Ninetales. You are inside that veil. You're freezing everyone. Your basic attacks are brutal. You're helping your teammates. You're stunning people. It is a seriously legit Pokemon. I could see someone saying it might go down into A tier, but I'm never upset when I see a Ninetales picked on my team. They're always really solid. Yeah, really solid. Let's talk about some more attackers then. Let's talk about Venusaur. Venusaur's in a weird spot because I think Venusaur is very solid, but I also roll my eyes a little bit when I know other Pokemon can be chosen instead. For instance, if we don't have a ton of damage, I would like, for instance, if I see someone taking Garchomp or something into the jungle and then we take Venusaur, I just think, I really wish that was Greninja or Cinderace doing some of that damage. It's a different kind of Pokemon, but it's just a little outclassed by some of the other attack damage Pokemon. That being said, it's not an attack damage Pokemon. It's more of a sniper, and it does a ton of ability damage. I actually think it's very legit and a good choice, but it's a little less consistent when I see people play with Venusaur. I'm going to keep it in the A tier for now. I actually think it's super solid, but it's probably the bottom of the A tier. That's what I'm thinking about Venusaur right now. Another attacker, Cramorant. Cramorant's probably my favorite. It's up there as one of my favorite Pokemon to play. I really love Cram. I think I'm pretty solid with Cram too. I think the Surf Hurricane build is the build for Cramorant. Its Unite move is amazing and really helps secure some incredible team fights around objectives. It has incredible control and damage. It's really good in the lane early. You know, call me crazy, but I'm moving Cram into the S tier right now. I think Cram's very good. There's only a little thing that makes me want to move it back down to A. I might move it back down to A, and I'll talk about this in a moment. But right now, I think Cram is really amazing. Gardevoir. Gardevoir is in a really weird place, and the place is it needs a ton of experience. So when I see people play Gardevoir well, it's often in the jungle, or they just happen to be extremely good with Gardevoir, and they can really get experience in their lane. If I'm seeing a Gardevoir go top lane, I actually usually assume it's not going to rotate down to Dreadnought, and it's going to stay in the top lane and get that experience. Because of how much it needs it, I honestly don't even think that's necessarily a bad play. Your teammates are going to think you're doing something dumb. But if you know how to get enough experience quickly with Gardevoir, you can become a real beast. That being said, I think solo, it's a mess. And really only unless your team knows how to let you have a lot of experience do you really, really shine. I'm going to move Gardevoir into the B tier right now. Top of the B. Top of the B to you, Gardevoir. And again, with the perfect setup, I think this is a really great Pokemon. But, you know, given that the meta is shifting so tanky and we're just seeing these beefy teams, I don't even think it's that amazing at times. And I'm sure some people could say the same thing about Cramorant, but I think its utility is a little bit stronger. I actually think Gardevoir, maybe it's the bottom of the A tier, but right now I'm putting it into the B tier. I just think it needs so much help. And it's interesting, you're seeing 3 Pokemon here who need so much experience. They just need so much. All right, let's see. Do we have any other attackers? Pikachu. I love you, Pikachu. You're so fun, so good in lane. So good early. You fall off late game. I'm disappointed with how hard you fall off late game. You are a B tier Pokemon. I can't wait for the Pikachu buff, and I wonder if it's coming with mobile because everyone's getting Pikachu. A Pikachu buff is going to make this Pokemon into a real monster. Another one of the Pokemon that I had an extremely high win rate heading into Masters was Pikachu, and I think it's because its ease of play is through the roof. I'm actually surprised they didn't give everyone Pikachu when the game came out. You know, they gave him Zeraora. But Pikachu is so easy to use that you're not going to make a ton of mistakes with Pikachu, as opposed to someone like Gardevoir, who I think is hard to use, and you miss a few moves and all of a sudden you're just, you know, you're useless. Pikachu, you can't even really miss. So great Pokemon early, pretty good mid, really needs help late game, and that's why it's in the B tier. Okay, let's see who's next. Let's go with all right, let's go with a tried and true, Snorlax. Snorlax has been in the God tier before. It did get a nerf, but its nerf is pretty irrelevant, I would say. It wasn't nothing, but it's still an amazing Pokemon. Its Heavy Slam and Block is incredible. Some people like Flail and Yawn. They're insane, but it could be good in a solo game. But in a high-ranked game, Block and Heavy Slam are amazing. You reposition with Heavy Slam, you push people with Block, you change team fights. It's incredible. Snorlax is without question an S tier Pokemon and is part of this really, really tanky meta that I'm seeing lately. Let's talk about some of the other defenders while we're here. Crustle, Slowbro, and Blastoise. So Crustle is a Pokemon that I'm more and more impressed with the more I see it. And it's weird because it doesn't fulfill the same role exactly as Snorlax. It's a different kind of defender. And I truly think it is an S tier choice right now. And it is because not only is it insanely bulky, not only can it really help you secure objectives, but you also get to sort of play this very frustrating for the enemy team scoring game with Crustle, where you're moving around the map at a ridiculous rate. You're taking wild Pokemon, you're scoring, you're using Fluffy Tail, and you're helping secure objectives. Crustle is just so good right now. You can have a team with both Snorlax and Crustle on it. I don't think that would be weird at all. I play Crustle in the top lane with a Fluffy Tail, Shell Smash, and a Stealth Rock right now. And basically, if done right, you will make it to every objective and help secure it. And at the same time, once those are done, you are going to a point in the map that the enemy can't fully defend, and you are scoring points on open goals. And now you are putting the enemy in a position where they have to win Zap by the end of the match. So I think because of that, because of the insane mobility, because of how you can play it with Stealth Rock and Fluffy Tail, I think it is now an S tier Pokemon. I really love Crustle. It's one of my favorite Pokemon to play. It's so fun. Its fun factor's through the roof, you guys. All right, the other two. We've got Slowbro and we've got Blastoise. Blastoise was just added, and I know a lot of people think Blastoise is really, really powerful. I think it is really, really powerful. And Slowbro is the defender in the worst position in the game right now. Not bad, but I think the least ideal choice. And in fact, I'm going to move it into the Y category. Not because you can't pick it and do well. And don't pick Scald. Not because you can't pick it and do well, because compared to the other defenders, it is not as good. It needs to get some of its Surf CC back. It probably could use a little more damage, especially when you're comparing it to these three. I mean, it's not bad. If I had it on my team, I'm fine with it. I'm not upset seeing a Slowbro. It's just not as good as the other three. And then the question is, where does that leave Blastoise? Is it A tier? Is it S tier? Here's the thing. Blastoise is a tank with tons of defenses and health, and also deals absurd damage. It can be built both Surf and Hydro Pump and Rapid Spin Water Spout, both to great effect. You can play it in lane, you can play it in the jungle, you can play it anywhere, and it's really, really strong. Its only weakness is that it needs to evolve. That's really its only weakness, is you can get stuck at a level cap sometime and you need to take a wild Pokemon to evolve. But in general, I'm putting Blastoise in God tier. And I'm not saying that it's so powerful if you don't have it on your team you can't win. But when I see a Pokemon that's a defender and people are running it in the jungle because of how powerful its attack is, not to mention how high its health and defense is, I think they have created a monster with Blastoise. I think it's really incredible. When I know people are upset when they see it in the jungle, I get it. It's just that it's extremely good. And if you level this Pokemon early, its Unite move does more damage than most attackers. I don't know the exact numbers, but it's brutal. This Pokemon is brutal, and just like they've done with the last few Pokemon, they have released a Pokemon that is crazy, crazy powerful, and it just is. Blastoise is crazy, crazy good. And the meta I am seeing is multiple tanky Pokemon in the match. So I'm seeing people like Blastoise with Wigglytuff, and another support you could see with Blastoise, Wigglytuff, Blissey, and then they put someone like Greninja, Lucario. And that team's amazing. Ninetales, Lucario. You just have so much bulk. It's hard for the enemy to deal with you, and you're getting all this damage from a Blastoise. It's pretty nuts. Let's talk about our supporters here. We got Eldy. We got Mimey. We got Blissey. Hey, that one actually worked. And we got Wiggly. That one worked too. Okay, so where do we put you guys? The fact of the matter is, the meta right now is supporters, very good. Defenders, very good. A few of the attackers, very good. Everything else, not so great, except for Lucario. So that's just kind of where we're at. And this happens in games like this all the time. You'll find a meta that's just dominated by the tankiest characters. Then they mess with that a little bit. Then the meta is dominated by the highest damage output characters. Patches change the way this game is played. New Pokemon change the way this game is played. It's one of my favorite things about games like this is that the meta changes. Some people get upset because they get really good with one Pokemon, but that is why I like to play a lot of different people, and I like to be open to new Pokemon rising into prominence, and supporters right now are all very, very good. I'll start with Wiggly, who I think is an S tier Pokemon. Wiggly's like a tank that also does crowd control and does a ton of damage. It's great in lane. Its Unite move is incredible for some of the team fights. It cleanses the Dreadnought debuff, which you don't necessarily need to worry too much about if your team's already winning, but you could. You could take Dreadnought and cleanse that debuff. You could also take Dreadnought, wait for a team fight, then cleanse the debuff. I mean, it's so good. Wiggly is so good. It's without question an S tier Pokemon. And I think kind of, if I have to rank the others against Wiggly, they're in different categories. But I would say Mime is an A tier. If you're really good with Mime, it's an A tier choice. I almost think that you could look at the supports like this. You could think that all of these supports are S tier. But if we're being more realistic, I think people would move LD back into the A tier, something probably like this, and you would probably see Blissey up in the S tier still. The thing about Blissey is its helping hand is amazing. It's also getting a buff soon, so it's going to get even better. Not helping hand, but Blissey is going to get even better. And it works well with Blastoise, Greninja, Cinderace, Lucario. It works well with Everybody in this game. It's so good. It helps your team position. It keeps people alive, and it makes your attackers stronger. It's such an amazing choice. Eldegoss I also think is very legit. In fact, I see teams running multiple supports all the time right now. And it just, when you have these huge tanks and you can keep them alive forever and they can dish out as much damage as an attacker, yeah. I love running LD right now. LD was kind of, it fell off a little bit around Blissey, obviously. It doesn't do everything as good as Blissey at times, but it's still an incredibly good Pokemon. I've seen teams with Wigglies and Blisseys. I've seen teams with Wigglies and Eldegosses, Blisseys and Eldegosses, and I think they're all actually really viable. Most times what you're seeing with some of these teams, these high-ranked teams, is you're seeing Lucario, obviously. You're seeing multiple defenders sometimes, like Blastoise and Snorlax, and then multiple supports. Other times you're seeing Greninja still in the jungle. You're still getting that Blastoise, and then you're seeing Lucario, Wiggly, LD, Lucario, Wiggly, Blissey. So supports are in an amazing place right now. Mime is great, but it just needs the right something for it to pop inside the game's meta. Because of that, it kind of moves itself into the B tier, only because the other supporters are so good, but I'm going to still keep it A for the time being. I think it's great. You just need to know what you're doing with Mime, and it's probably most ideal on a really set team. That being said, I think all the other supports participate in the meta a little stronger than Mr. Mime does. And now we all know what it's time for. Let's see if anybody wants to skip to the end of the video. We'll have a little fun with them. Bum, ba, bum, 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 bum. It is time to move people around. One of the tricks of moving people around, you'll notice, is not making it so obvious what's going on. So this is the crazy thing that's happening in the game right now, is that with the prominence, like I was saying earlier, of Eldegoss, Wiggly, and of course the defenders, Blastoise being #1 and Crustle, when you're seeing that, here's what you're seeing. You're getting a Gengar, of course, is now becoming popular again because it's catching some of the now weaker Cinderaces and Greninjas. And you're seeing Charizard also gain prominence because it's in the jungle. Basically, Gardevoir, Gengar, and Charizard are going in the jungle. Lucario is still going in lane because it's the best laner in the game. And Mr. Mime is getting incredibly important because Mr. Mime not only can block people, not only can use confusion, but has that Unite move that stops people from casting. It's one of the only ways to stop people from doing things. So if you pop its Unite move, your team has time to use your Gengar, use your Gardevoir, or your Charizard to get rid of the enemy team. It doesn't matter what Greninja is going to do if Greninja can't use its abilities and attacks, and that's what Mr. Mime does. It's why it's the best, and it's also why Blissey has dropped so low. If Blissey can't use any of its abilities, it's completely useless. Mime is countering some of the biggest plays in the meta right now, and honestly, it's really crazy to see, but let me know what you think in the comments. Thank you all for watching. Thank you for listening. I didn't expect to say it, but we are in a Mr. Mime world. It's a Mr. Mime world, and we're all living in it. Thanks, everybody. Goodbye. You will pay for what you've done.